It's a 2023-2024 season preview of the San Antonio Spurs next on The Dime.
You are now listening to The Dime with Josh and Kwab, your go-to NBA podcast. Subscribe on Apple, follow on Spotify, and be sure to hit up the YouTube channel for video content. And now your hosts, Josh and Kwab.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to The Dime. Today, we preview the 2023-2024 up-and-coming San Antonio Spurs, and we're doing it with the contributor for Air Alamo and the co-host for the At The Line podcast, talking San Antonio Spurs, the NBA, and everything in between. Everybody, please welcome to the show, for the first time for a full episode. He's been on draft episodes, but his first full episode, everybody, Ty Jager. Ty.
Well, I'm glad to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. We've been Twitter friends for a while now, I feel like.
For a long time.
Yeah, for a really long time. I like Ty a lot. A very good representation for Spurs Twitter. If you want to follow him at the Ty Jager there on Twitter, I highly suggest it. Also, his podcast, At The Line. Are you still doing At The Line?
We need to get back on it.
Okay.
It's kind of been, after moving up to Seattle from Texas, it's kind of been all over the place, and also it's kind of been a slow off season. So just kind of, I say slow.
This off season for the Spurs.
Okay,
technically slow.
Yeah.
We're in
Technically
the
slow for
period.
Spurs.
We're in the slow period. We had everything went off in May and June.
True.
And then somewhat in July, and then once August hit, it kind of like, okay, we don't have anything new. Wemby said that he's going to go on a hiatus, and that's exactly what he did.
He did.
And so we kind of got a good break for about 2 months.
True. That's true. All right, let's get right into it, man. We have to talk about Wembanyama. That has to be the first thing we talk about. Now, he was somebody who was foreign to the NBA community because he was from another country. He comes in, he has 2 summer league games. One, the general consensus was that it wasn't an impressive showing or wasn't that great of a showing. The second game, he absolutely dominated. I want to get your opinion about both games and what you saw from him and what you liked and what you didn't, if anything.
So game 1 was certainly underwhelming to everyone because everyone's coming out for this guy, this 7'4" foot guy that shit, like, honestly, in the G League, in the games that he played against the G League Ignite back in, I want to say it was October, November of last year. Mm-hmm. Whenever he came out, he was dominant on the offensive side. He was it just made it look too easy for everyone. And so everyone's expecting this whole dominant offensive performance. And while he comes out a bit shaky. He says that he didn't really practice, and he's just been on a media tour the whole time. But I was still impressed because defensively, it's an instant impact. It's like there's no question about it. Offensively, it was a bit shaky in that first game. In that first game, still, you got to look, and if you look at the defensive end, you're like, this guy is going to stop everyone. You can't get around him. And so I came out of game 1 still impressed because just looking at his defense alone, I'm like, okay, that's NBA ready. The offense will certainly come along with it once he gets to know his teammates, once he gets to know more of the offensive schemes and understand how the NBA plays. But defensively, it's already there.
Yeah.
So I'm like, so game 1, I was very impressed defensively, even though everyone else was just kind of talking trash the whole time after that. It's like, it's only one. It's one game after
relax,
people
relax, calm down.
Relax. It's one game in the summer league. Are we really going to start calling bust after game 1 of the summer league?
Twitter will do that.
Yes.
Regardless, despite an amazing defensive performance. Yeah. So I'm so glad that game 2 he came kicked ass. He showed that offensive capabilities that he has, and defensively, same thing. And I think defensively he will remain that. But offensively, he came back and showed you more what he did against Ignite back in those first games, and just showed you that once he's in a rhythm, he's hard to stop.
You talking about the defensive side? It was impressive because he was guarding on the perimeter against like Brandon Miller. Like he wasn't in the paint like guard. He was outside like showing his length. So it was an impressive performance on that side.
Yeah, no, it's the way that he can he takes like 3 steps and he's from the paint already out to the perimeter. Just the way that he's going to impact the offenses just being on the court is such a dramatic difference than I think anyone else in the league can even say. So, but just his presence alone, you gotta adjust for it. And Wembanyama is going to do that for teams. Teams are not going to be able to play their normal offense. They're really going to have to push and really navigate around a 7'4" guy that just blocks everything.
I guess the question here too is like, and I know you're probably tired of talking about this specific thing, but I mean, he's like very thin, it's very physical league. Are you worried about that at all? Do you think there's any credence to those concerns that people have about his, his body and the physicality of the league?
I think the concern is definitely valid. I certainly have that in the back of my head no matter what. I'm like thinking like, how can Wembanyama can be really good if he stays healthy?
You're right.
And so it's a very valid concern for everyone to have. And it's something I've had. But compared to, say, let's look back at Yao Ming, because Yao Ming was probably the next tallest guy that made a big splash going into the league.
Yeah.
Yao Ming was much heavier. He had already had foot issues prior to that. And foot issues was the thing that ended his career. Wembanyama, though, we are now 20 years ahead of that. We are now, our sports medicine is far superior than it used to be. And Wembanyama has made a dedicated effort to strengthen his legs, his feet, and has like a specific trainer that is now going to join San Antonio.
Oh, I know that.
And but there's a rigorous process of stretching and exercises that he goes through just to make sure that he strengthens his vulnerable parts of his body because of his frame.
I didn't know that.
And I don't think that many people do know that system. And just so how much work and effort that he's putting into taking care of his body, that has eased my concerns tremendously. I still have these concerns. It just takes one wrong step for everything to go wrong. I look back at I forgot what year it was exactly, but the year that DeJounte Murray tore his ACL in preseason. I always think back to that. It's just one wrong step that can derail a whole season.
That could be anybody.
It can derail
and
it can be anyone. And so I think it's always a concern that injuries are going to happen, but I am not as massively concerned with his frame, knowing the things that he's going through to make sure that he stays healthy.
Are you concerned about, I guess the mental side of playing in NBA? Just because of his stardom, even though he hasn't played his actual first NBA game, he's going to get pulled. Like, he's going to be the one everybody who's going to want to interview. Every city he goes to, like, they're going to want to talk to him. So it's going to be a lot on his plate on top of playing. Are you concerned about that mental aspect for him?
I don't think so. Everything that I've seen of Wembanyama is this kid is mature beyond his years. He's only 19, but he acts like he's older than me, and I'm 25. And so just the way that he holds himself and he conducts himself, it's very Spursy in that way. Spurs are a very professional organization.
Yeah.
And the way that he conducts himself is in a very professional manner. If you really want a good listen, go listen to JJ Redick's episode with him right before the draft. Amazing piece of basketball content for anyone. And so to add on to his maturity, he's already kind of been in this media cycle for about a year now, even a little bit more. And I think that he's going to adjust to it. Now, the NBA is certainly a very much different thing. The workload is going to be much heavier. There's going to be a lot more time dedicated to this. I'm not expecting him to play 82 games, honestly. But like you said, it's going to be mentally taxing. But with how he's already conducted himself now, I think he's going to be perfectly fine in that department.
I feel bad for him because it's like they're comparing him to LeBron as a prospect, but it's also you go into an organization that just had Tim Duncan. So not only do you have to like meet expectations with LeBron, you have to meet expectations with Tim Duncan, even David Robinson to a certain extent. They just came off of the Spurs just came off of a dynasty. He couldn't have went to a more I don't want to say pressurized, because San Antonio, I don't know if the media is like over there. The fans seem really cool. Every Spurs person I know on Twitter is really cool. So it doesn't seem like it's that cutthroat over there, but the expectations, they're got to be through the roof. I mean, I'm not saying he has to be Duncan, but do you think that he's going to feel that? I mean, screw the LeBron comparison. What about Duncan?
Yeah, no, and I think that he's really embracing those expectations. He's coming in. He knows that he's only the third number one overall pick in this that the Spurs have ever experienced. He's very well aware of the people that came before him. And I think I'm not sure of what he's said exactly, but I believe that he's up for that task. I believe that he is capable of not like handling that pressure in a way. Yeah. It is a lot of pressure. And I think going to this first season, I think a lot of people are going to have high expectations, and it doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to make them all. I think he's going to do really well, but I don't think he's going to I don't expect him to be in the MVP conversation like Tim Duncan was as a rookie. But also, who knows? The Spurs make the playoffs somehow, and then maybe you look at Wembanyama. It's like maybe he is an MVP all of a sudden. But that is a year ahead at this point.
What was your initial reaction going back? What was your initial reaction when the team won the lottery?
I was. We were doing a Twitter space or something. And I just someone spoiled it for us, but all of us just started. Well, it was like because we were behind, we were way behind on the stream, and
Gotcha.
but someone said, "No way!" And I instantly looked at my phone. I saw, and I just started jumping. I'm screaming. I'm running around the apartment. My cats are terrified. My roommate's like, "What the hell are you doing?" My neighbor is probably pounding the ceiling because I'm like running all over the place. I take a shot out of nowhere because I was like, "Okay, we got it. I gotta take a shot out of
Why not? That's awesome.
Out of the Spurs shot glass." And no, it was. I was very nervous, but I had a good feeling though, because it's like, whenever you look at the Spurs, like their lottery success is the only thing that's ever possibly gone right for them outside their championships in terms of draft. It's like, I'm just expecting the Spurs have a chance for a number 1 overall pick. The last 2 times they had that, they got David Robinson and Tim Duncan. I'm just going to hope for the best and expect the pattern to continue. And it obviously did.
Man. All right. Well, what about the rest of the young core? Because I think the Spurs have some nice players there. Obviously, they're not players that are like lighting the league on fire, but I think it's a nice like foundation to give Victor heading into his rookie year. Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Trey Jones. How would you grade them? Who would you want to keep? What's your overall thoughts on them?
So Devin Vassell is the first one that comes to mind. This is a guy that was meant to have a breakout season last season before a nagging knee injury kept holding him back. But this is a guy that potentially could be your lead scorer for the San Antonio next season based on his skills. He's a 3-level scorer. He can shoot. He can finish inside. He can shoot the mid-range like a master. I'm so glad. I'm not sure. I don't remember if he got any time with DeMar DeRozan, but he looks like DeMar DeRozan sometimes. But I say this in a funny way that he finds a spot. He just goes up and it looks so beautiful. The release is high. It's a beautiful shot that he has. And then he can shoot the 3-ball. And then you add on that he has really good defensive chops. Now, last year, Spurs were one of the worst defenses in the league, almost historically bad. So I'm not going to really factor too much of what happened last year. But Devin Vassell came into the league with the really good defensive skills. And the two-way capability that Devin Vassell has, it's going to be something that the Spurs are really going to be rely on. And he's going to be an instant number 2 option for Wembanyama. And even then, he might be getting more of the heavier scoring load if Wembanyama is going to be more on defense. Just the way that he's able to score, find his spots, and then just be a good defensive pest. He's probably the second most valuable guy on this roster. Following him, it would be Jeremy Sohan. We'll get into him a little bit later, but Jeremy Sohan, I say, is like the 3rd best guy on this team. Keldon Johnson. I'm kind of mixed with Keldon. I love Keldon. Very loud. He's always going to scream no matter what. Everyone knows it.
It's a good thing.
If you're screaming, you're just going to assume, oh, that's Keldon Johnson. I heard it from a mile away. But Keldon Johnson kind of came into the team last year and had to take a higher role than I think he's actually meant for.
Yeah.
He did lead the team in scoring, but I'm not expecting that to hold. Devin Vassell, he was second in scoring, and I expect him to even go higher than that. Keldon Johnson, I just don't see that. However, Keldon Johnson is still a good player to go to, especially on the offensive end. This is a guy that can crash inside, just finish around the rim with ease. And then early on in the season, he did have a really solid 3-point shot. Now, once his role had to kind of elevate outside of his range, that 3-point shot went down, the efficiency went down. But I think adding Wembanyama, adding a healthy Devin Vassell, I think that 3-point shooting percentage should go up. But his point value is going to go down. But around that, he's just able to be a guy that can go inside and bully guys for baskets. Yeah. And I like him in that way, but I think his role is going to be severely limited compared to what we saw last year.
What do you envision the starting lineup being in your mind right now?
Okay, so this is a tough question because it all matters based off 2 guys, I would say. I think it's a lock that you're going to have Devin Vassell there. You're going to have Wembanyama at the 4 with Zach Collins at the 5.
Okay.
So, and everything, and all the rosters that the Spurs have released, they have marked Wembanyama as a power forward. And I think that he's going to play more of the 4 than the 5 just because of the physicality, why he's getting adjusted to the league. The other 2 questions come down to the remaining 3 guys. You have 2 spots with 3 starting capable guys, Trey Jones, Keldon Johnson, and Jeremy Sohan. Some people like to say, why don't you just put Keldon Johnson and have Jeremy Sohan run points? I don't see that.
That's a little out there for me. I'm not gonna lie.
I don't know. And guess what? That's a popular lineup amongst Spurs fans.
Okay.
because some people are just don't want to bench Keldon Johnson. And I say you bench Keldon Johnson and you start Tre Jones. Tre Jones is he is a point guard. You start him at your point, obviously.
Yeah.
And you start Jeremy at your 3. But Tre Jones, he is one of the most solid guards that you can find in the league. He's not exceptional, but he's not bad in any way. Like, he'd probably be one of the best backup guards if he did slide back.
He's a prototype. Like, that's what he reminds. He's just like, if you build a point guard in a lab, it's probably Tre Jones.
Yeah, and Tre Jones is awesome. I love Tre Jones. The way that he can still hold himself defensively despite being like 6'3". His playmaking abilities just elevated the Spurs every time that he was on the court. Every time that he was off the court last year, the offense just fell apart. He's an anchor in terms of running your team as a floor general and just being able to set up guys. I think the big question is, though, can he elevate himself offensively? Can he add a 3-point shot? Right. And last season, near in the late stretch, we did see him start to take more threes. I need to find the percentage exactly. But late last season, we started seeing him find confidence in that 3 ball. If he's able to have a solid 3 ball along with everything else that he brings, that's a starting point guard right there. And that's going to be a point guard that's going to be valuable next to a guy next to Wemby, who needs a setup guy. Right. He needs like we saw this with Mets 92. He didn't have a solid setup guy, and he had to really carry the offense himself. And that's kind of why they lost the series against Monaco. But if Tre Jones is able to elevate himself, he's going to be a great setup man. And honestly, this comes from a Spurs fan that said, I wanted the Spurs to trade for another first round pick and get a guy like Cason Wallace. I wanted another point guard upgrade. But I think Tre Jones is very capable of taking over that role and even elevating himself. He's only 23.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Jeremy Shaw? You were alluding to it before. He's a very interesting player. Kind of like Rodman in the aesthetic. But what does he mean to the team? What is it like having him on the team, and what role would you like for him to play? Because I feel like he can fit different roles.
The best term that I've heard with him to describe him is he's a Swiss Army knife. He can do a lot of everything. He might not be the best shooter, but he does everything else for you on the floor. He's a constant effort. You never see him taking a break on any side of the ball. Defensively, he can lock up some of the best guys. He was assigned to some of the best players in his rookie season and held his own. Yeah. And he was one of the best defenders for San Antonio last season. And whenever he did go out near the late stretch, that defense just looked like total did not do good. Let's just say that. But offensively, he brings a lot of crashing to the boards. He can finish really well at the rim. We've seen plenty of posters from him already in his young career. And then I did allude that some fans have mentioned of him running the point. He does have some playmaking chops. Yeah. And I think as a secondary playmaker, he might be a pretty solid option in that sense. He knows how to read the floor. He knows how to find his guys cutting. And that also add on, he knows when to cut really well too, kind of like Doug McDermott does. Yeah. And so a Swiss Army knife of a player that's just able to do everything really well. And then add on that he's very coachable. We obviously saw this with a one-handed free throw. I don't think any other player in the league would do that. Right. And he embraced it, and he shot better with it. He improved his free throw percentage into the 80s just by shooting one-handed.
He sounds a lot like Draymond when you describe him like that. Like a lot like Draymond Green.
That's kind of the role I see him in, is playing a Draymond role. Like that third best guy on the team. He might not be the best scorer in the league, but he's going to bring everything that you need defensively and do everything that you need him to do offensively.
Do you think that there's a way that he can coexist with Victor Wembanyama and the current roster that you have? Like, how would you mix them together? How do you think Pop is going to do that?
The first player Wemby met of his teammates was Jeremy Sohan on draft night, and It seems like these two are already close. Defensively, these two are going to be a nightmare for teams.
Yeah,
especially whenever you have Wemby, you have Jeremy Sohan being able to guard you on the perimeter and also inside as well. And then if you are able to get past him, and then you have a 7'4" Wemby to face, it's a 1-2 punch defensively that I think that I'm most excited about on this team is those two playing together on the defensive side.
What about your other rookie, Malachi Branham? What were your thoughts on his season?
Malachi, he had a really strong season going late into this year. Whenever he started getting minutes, he started showing that offensive chops, the offensive capabilities of being a 3-level scorer. But with Malachi Branham, he had a really good year last year and near the late of the season, and he showed off his scoring chops. Defensively, I still have some questions, but also the Spurs defense was just overall bad. So I can't really put too much weight into his defense, but he was one of the worst defenders last year in the league. But offensively, he's able to score. And I think that's going to be a key thing. Like the best way to describe him is Jordan Clarkson. a guy that can come off the bench and be a scoring plug. And so, but I'm really impressed with his scoring capabilities from three, from inside, and then a little bit of playmaking. But I think he has a bright future if he continues to be able to get minutes.
Is there anybody else on the roster, a young guy who you're excited about that you don't think is getting talked about a lot when it comes to this team?
Sidy Cissoko. He is the second round pick for the Spurs this year. Another Frenchman, another defensively minded Frenchman too.
Yeah.
And I was really impressed from what I saw from him during the summer league. Offensively, he was very quiet, didn't really go for scoring, but defensively, that's an NBA ready defender right there. And it's no question about it. I'm really excited to see what he can do defensively. He got a full contract too with the Spurs, where we thought he might have gotten two-way.
Yeah.
So you might see a good amount of Sidy Cissoko going into San Antonio, but he's a guy to kind of keep an eye on, especially on the defensive side. Again, overall, this team, they were the worst defensive team last year. And this year, they're going to be in the top half of the league, maybe top 10 if they really pan out to what the expectations are.
Huge jump, but it does make sense.
Huge jump.
Yeah, it does make sense.
Another player I'm kind of intrigued about that's not being talked about. Blake Wesley, that's coming back from injury. What are your thoughts on him?
Blake Wesley is a guy that still needs to take some time and really needs to develop. He's very raw. He has all this speed, but his decision-making can improve. His overall game can improve. And I think the Spurs, he was the third first-round pick in that 2022 draft. And I think the Spurs were very well aware of the time that it would take to really develop him. I have seen a lot of things that irritate me, like his decision-making during Summer League was not where it should be. But his speed is there. He's a speedy guy, can get the steals, and he's really impressive that end. But he just needs more time to marinate and really let the game come to him to really improve. I'm not sure what the long-term plans are in San Antonio. He's one of those guys that I would put on the short list of maybe not going to be here in a few seasons, possibly. But that's just based on how he develops as a player.
Yeah, some people got to go. It just is what it is.
It happens.
Yeah, you gotta learn that not all these picks are going to pan out, especially if you have 3 first-round picks. Not all of them are going to pan out.
It is what it is. We just talked about the young core. Let's talk about the vets now. How do you think Pop is going to work in the vets? I mean, he seems like someone who, Pop wants to win, and obviously he's a very interesting coach where I think his identity has changed so much throughout the year. But you have Devontae Graham, Doug McDermott, Reggie Bullock, Cedi Osman. Are they going to be in the rotation? Is Pop going to prioritize developing young players over these vets? Or is Pop going to put these vets in situations where it's like, okay, I need you to lead us to victory? How is he going to balance all this?
So there's 3 guys that I'm considering vets that are going to be instant playmakers here. Zach Collins, he's technically a vet now. He's going into year 7.
Right. Yeah.
And he's only played 5 years of basketball because of injuries, but he's been around the league a lot. He's going to be a guy that really helps Wemby on the court when it comes to the starters. This is a guy that's going to be an enforcer whenever Wemby needs it, and he's going to be able to. He just plays really well. He's able to stretch the floor, finish inside. He did a lot of good stuff once Jakob Poeltl was traded to Toronto last year, and I am very impressed with Zach Collins. Zach Collins is a guy that you need to keep an eye on too if you're going to be watching Spurs throughout the season.
Okay.
The other 2 guys that I think are going to be in the rotation, but I just don't know to what degree. That's Reggie Bullock and Doug McDermott. Okay. Doug McDermott, he might be dangerous with Wemby on the floor.
Doug, man. I think he's so underrated.
No, Doug McDermott, in terms of a role player, Doug McDermott's one of the best.
He is.
This is a guy that will shoot the lights out no matter what. We all know the score that he was in college. He's able to just shoot the lights out. He cuts so smartly. He does not need the basketball to make a difference. And just that ability to play without the ball is so big, especially to a young team like this. He's allowing these other young guys to get the ball and learn, but help them out whenever it's needed. Defensively, definitely could use some improvement, but offensively, it's no question. Doug McDermott's strong. But now on the defensive side, I'm very fascinated to see where Reggie Bullock lands in this rotation. This is a 3-and-D guy he will make a difference no matter for what your team he's on. And honestly, this could be a guy that the Spurs trade near the deadline, depending on how the season goes.
Yeah.
But I still would love to see the capabilities that he brings to this team coming off the bench, especially on the defensive side of the ball, whenever this could be a very defensively strong team.
Is there a player that you would want the team to trade for? Of course, I know it's kind of like a pie in the sky question, but like, is there a player you envision like the Spurs like trading for during the course of the season?
It's the challenge. I don't think the Spurs are going to make any dramatic trades for players. I think if anything does happen, they will send some veteran players out for some draft capital as they just update the roster, take care of money situations. I just don't know who they would trade for at this moment. And the funny thing was, a lot of Spurs fans were talking about, oh, Giannis could force his way out. I don't see that happening now with Dame. I just don't see that. Everyone won Dame. That I didn't think that was going to happen.
Yeah.
If the Spurs are going to do anything, it might be an upgrade for the point guard position. Now, the dream player I would love to see next to Wembanyama and a guy I've always wanted a Spurs jersey is Sabonis. I want Domantas Sabonis in a Spurs jersey so bad. I've wanted him since he was in Indiana.
I love his game.
This is a guy that like his ability to play on like just so in such a wide range. I would love to see that next to Wemby. Lauri Markkanen might be another guy I would love to see. The same kind of player type as Sabonis.
Interesting.
But it's like I would like a
prototype
strong
big man who can like shoot and pass type of thing.
Yes, I would like a strong 4 or a strong 5 that just is a nice pairing partner next to Wemby.
Wow, I was going to ask you like what the prototype would be. It actually kind of shocks me that you say that. That's cool. Like that's a really cool answer. And I like that a lot. Took me back a little bit though. That's cool.
I'm glad to surprise.
Yeah, I want to ask you about Coach Pop. How long? how long is that man?
If he keeps getting these,
is he going to be coaching in a wheelchair?
Forever.
Is there going to be
Forever.
a hologram? You know what's. I love him to death. He's one of the greatest coaches of all time, but it's no secret the Spurs are rebuilding right now. They have a nice, exciting future for sure. But Pop, you're getting old, bro. How long? Because if this develops correctly and the Spurs are contenders like 4 or 5 years, Pop's got to see it through, and that's another 5 to 10 years. Like what's the deal here with Pop?
He's 74 now. He just signed a 3-year extension. In fact. So he's going to be here for a little while. Now, he could easily retire during that session as if he finds someone that can follow him. But who knows? Maybe we do see Papa for another 20 years.
Can you imagine just put a cane on the sideline?
And he's going to still be yelling at people, and he's going to yell with full might. No,
he's going to have
I think
bullhorn on the sideline.
He's going to. What was that? What did you say? And he's still going to coach a championship team in that.
Right. They're going to win a championship.
Yeah, of course.
Realistically, I think that we might have about 5 more years of Pop. I think he might go till he's 80. Honestly, I think 5 years is kind of a good range of you get to see what you have in Wembanyama. He has the time to kind of mentor someone to take over his role. Now, he is both the head coach and president of basketball operations. What I can see him doing is he gives up his head coaching position to someone that he wants to follow him, but he maintains his basketball operations position.
Okay.
And I think once he retires from that basketball operations position, then you'll never see him ever again. He's never going to be seen in the public. He's not going to go out and do events. He's already gone to the Hall of Fame. He's going to avoid basketball altogether. But also, this is a guy that has lived, breathed, and eat basketball for the past 30 plus years. So I don't think it's going to be easy to pull him away. But I think realistically, there's about 5 years left with him. And going for this next few years, it's going to be developing Wembanyama and developing someone to take over that head coach position.
Do you think that this team overall is low-key trying to contend to make the playoffs or even like win the in-season tournament? Like, do you think it's going to be a competitive team throughout the course of the season?
That'd be cool.
Last year, the Spurs were still a competitive team despite their record, and they were still in games late. They would fall apart in late game situations, but they would make these games competitive throughout the season, and they were really fun to watch in that capacity. Despite that they were losing, I'm like, I'm going to still watch this team because it's just fun to watch. And so I think that they're going to come out to be competitive. They are nowhere near contender at this moment, obviously, but I'm going to expect them to try to fight to get into the playoffs in some sort of way. And I think their realistic range might be a play-in. And I think the best case scenario is 5 or 6 seed. That's best case. Wembanyama is more than advertised.
Yeah.
He's an MVP guy. That's when 5 and 6 come in. I do think 7 through 10, very realistic for this team, especially when you look out west. Yes, the West is stacked. Every team can make a run. However, injuries happen. I'm looking at you, Clippers. I don't expect that team to stay healthy. I just don't. I don't. Kawhi, unfortunately, he has that degenerative knee condition.
Yeah.
I just don't see him playing long. Paul George has been injury prone ever since. And even if they get James Harden's not going to do anything. Come on, James Harden's out of his prime. He's very lacking. But that's just one example of injuries are going to derail a handful of teams. It's bound to happen. And I think the Spurs are in a good, advantageous position to take advantage of that. They can take advantage of teams that are going to be down a man. They're going to be able to take care of teams that are just not having a good run. And I think they're going to be competitive. Wembanyama is going to make them a much better team. He's elevated their ceiling already. And now you're going to have a healthy Devin Vassell. You're going to have a second-year Jeremy Sohan. You're going to have a developed Keldon Johnson, fourth-year Trey Jones, Zach Collins, who has now just got through one full healthy year. There's a lot going the Spurs' way. There's a lot of momentum behind them.
So what would your prediction be? I know it's kind of hard to say because it's the preseason. We haven't seen any preseason game, trade deadline things happen. But objectively, like if you had to guess, with the load management that probably Wembanyama is going to have, young core vets, how do you see this playing out? Like if you had to give a prediction.
I think the Spurs are going to play this safe with Wembanyama's health. If there's a back-to-back, I doubt that he plays both. But I know this is a guy that wants to play every game. That he is very competitive and he just wants to be out there playing. So I don't think the Spurs are going to sit him as much as everyone thinks. But I'm not expecting 82 games out of him. I'm expecting maybe it's going to be in the upper 60s, I would say, depending on health and everything. I think upper 60s is a good realistic range. But he's going to play in as many games as he possibly can. But the Spurs are still going to be very health conscious. They're going to make sure that they don't overwork this guy in his first year because they will expect a dynasty of this guy. They're not expecting a first year success. Tim Duncan was not as good as Tim Duncan was. The Spurs did not win a championship in their first season with him. They did not win their first season with David Robinson. Now they are good teams, but I'm not expecting a contender right now. I'm expecting a play-in, and I'm expecting a Spurs team that's going to make sure that Wemby develops the right way and is allowed to stay healthy.
All right, Ty Jager, everybody. Ty, thank you for coming on The Dime. Let everybody know where they can find you, follow you, anything you want to plug, you can do so.
You can follow me on Twitter, whatever it's called now. I'm still calling it Twitter.
Twitter.
You can find me there at the Ty Jager. That's the Ty Tyjager, just like the alcohol. And honestly, you can find me. You can find the same handle on Instagram, Threads,
everything.
Everything. It's the same thing. And you're gonna hopefully maybe my podcast comes back of At the Line. You can find that At the Line pod on Twitter as well.
All right, if you want to follow The Dime, you can on all social media platforms at The Dime NBA. I'm Josh Rodriguez at Josh_Rodriguez_. He's Kwab at Kwab, a.k.a. Yes. We'll see you next week for another episode of The Dime.